CDW 2024 Canadian Hybrid Cloud Report is here. Discover how AI, hybrid cloud, and IoT are shaping the future of Canadian businesses. Get the full report at cdw.ca/cloud.
Blog Talk Radio.
Everybody, and welcome to Paranormal Guys Inc. Radio. Don't mind that. That's my new theme song. That's in a bit of construction mode. I just wanted to get the general feel of what it sounded like over the air. And without question, those are two of the biggest known sci-fi / UFO movie sound effects that I can remember, and probably two of my most favorite movies as well. Of course, it's Close Encounters of the Third Kind and also Contact. I hope you enjoyed it, but tonight I got a very special show. A good friend here on Blog Talk Radio, host himself, author and a researcher, Dennis Crenshaw, will be coming on within seconds. And I'll do all of the ritualistic hellos at the end of the show because I want to bring him in and get right down to this. Been eagerly waiting to speak to him, so here he is now.
Hey, how you doing, Jason?
I'm doing great. I hope you didn't mind that little Maniac sort of song. It's a new...
No, man, I recognize both of them.
Yeah, a YouTube friend of mine put it together, and he wanted me to go for a run and see how it sounded on air, and I said definitely, I would check that out, and I like it. I think it could be, tweaked a little bit more, but it's a work in progress, but
yeah.
How you doing tonight?
Oh, I'm doing great, man. I, just hanging out on Sunday after, I do my show on Saturday night, and so Sunday's usually just hang out day,
Yeah, and your show was really great one to listen to last night, and as I mentioned on air, you do have your own show here. It's Unraveling the Secrets on Blog Talk Radio, and I also posted all your websites in the chat room. Most of the people in here are friends of yours as well as mine.
Right.
And they do know you, but can you give your website over the air? That way people...
Sure. And first let me say I'm glad to see everybody, all my friends and your friends too that have showed up for the chat room. Yes, I have several websites. We've got of course, the Unraveling the Secrets show here on Blog Talk Radio on Saturday night at midnight Eastern Time, which by the way, is also simulcast now over TV network. It's peoplestvnetwork.com, channel 1 at the same time. Sometimes we have guests with video and stuff, so it's nice to switch over there, even though we're still loyal Blog Talk people. That's myself and Rick Osmond, who's a fabulous help in building our show. And also we've got a web page, which is www.unravelingthesecrets.com, where we, along with some of our other guests, will be posting messages from, about what we're doing about. So it's going to be kind of a shared website for all the people that want to use it that come on our show regular. And then I've got my old-time website, which I started in about, I think, 98. We put it up, which is www.thehollowearthinsider.com. And, that's my oldest site. And then I have my book site, which is www.secretsofadelshaw. That's DELLSCHAU.com. And really like you to go check that one out because my co-writer, Pete Navarro, I've got some of his artwork there that's included in the book and several other things. While you're there, you also might want to check out the forum, which you can reach from that page, and especially after some of the stuff we'll be talking about, the 1896 airship mystery. I've posted several of my original writings up there on that subject. So anyway, that's all of my information. Boy, it takes a long time just to name off that. I didn't realize I had all that going for me.
Well, after 20 years, because in your bio, you mentioned that it took you 2 decades to get this book together. You would certainly accumulate a lot of information and websites along the way. But as everyone knows, a good thing, it takes time to build. And let's get right into your book. The whole concept about it, you probably were interested in the topic to begin with, but what really piqued it for you? What crossed you over, to dedicate 20 years of your life to trying to uncover history?
Actually, it was 14 years, and most of that was fighting to get it published in the form that I wanted it published in with the 3 publishers. But actually, where I started in the whole project, not even realized it was many years before, when I studied the 1896 airship mysteries that I just mentioned. I'm sure you and most of your listeners know of that. But in 1896, 1897, I believe it was around November of that year, starting in San Francisco, And then slowly spreading across the United States to Chicago and a couple of sightings in New York, there were reports of giant flying machines in the air. Now, we're talking 50 years before the Wright brothers. And these sightings were seen by reputable people, such people as the state attorney of California, the governor of San Francisco, the mayor of San Francisco, the chief of police of San Francisco, and then law officers and people of that sort all across the nation. They were reported in the newspapers of the time, and they used the actual names of the witnesses, and many of them swore to certificates and all of that they saw flying machines in the air. So that really sparked my interest. Like I say, I saw a huge UFO in 1962 during the Cuban Missile Crisis at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. I was in the 82nd Airborne, and we were on lockdown in our barracks because of the Cuban Missile Crisis, and they let two of us out to go get cigarettes and candy for the other people in the barracks. And as we were walking back through the empty streets of Fort Bragg, we saw a huge machine. We judged it to be 150 feet long by 50 feet tall, and it just happened that both of us were trained, very well trained in night observation, because that was our job, was to go out in the field and try to spot stuff at night. So we saw what we saw, and from that point on, I became interested in UFOs. And of course, as anybody begins to study that subject, they'll discover the 1896 airship mysteries. So coming forward from that, I reached the point where I reached the point in about the mid 80s. And I said, there's something wrong with the picture here. We're all studying UFOs 50 years, and all we know is there's squiggly lights in the sky. We all speculate in all of this, but I firmly believe with all of this paranormal, all of the paranormal stuff, there is a simple answer to each thing. We just have to find that simple answer. So I went back and I said, well, I'm going to go back to the very early days of UFO reporting and start at 1947 and work my way forward. So I did that, and I discovered that when the Condor took over in the early 60s, late 90s, that they found that under Operation Sign, the CIA had stepped in and had said, it's time to end this silliness. Number one, they were going to infiltrate all the UFO groups, which I think was pretty well done. Number two, they were going to use Hollywood to make movies to first off but laugh at people who believed in UFOs, but then if they continued to believe it, put in subliminal messages pointing towards a intergalactical or a alien from outer space image, and that's what they did with all the 50s the 50s movies about that. They always end with a man with his hand around the main chick's shoulder saying, yeah, looking at they're staring out into space, and yeah, they will return. Well, that's subliminal messaging. What I actually found out that a lot of the early belief by the early UFO investigators before the CIA involvement, they were starting to believe that UFOs actually came from Earth, that they actually came from a civilization that shares our Earth with us, that's far beyond our development. And so at that point, I decided that was where I was going to start studying, start looking into that. So I realized I said, well, first, where are the places where they could hide these bases and whatnot? Well, there's several. There's the North and South Pole, there's under the ocean, and there's inside the Earth itself. So I decided to start investigating inside the Earth itself. And because of a couple of things that the early UFOers said, I decided to start with a hollow Earth theory. So that's where I was in the 60s and 70s. That's where I was. but I dropped it, and then in the 80s I picked it back up with the Florida. I was living in Alaska at the time, and that huge Japan Airlines flight that to me is the number one proof that we are being visited by something. Happened while I was there, so it sparked my interest again, and I came back to Florida and started the Hollow Earth Insider and got the name as the Hollow Earth guy. And a lot of people believe that I solely believe that yes, the Earth is hollow. That's not true at all, but I do believe there's something to look at as far as UFOs coming from inside of our Earth.
That's a great point. And do you think majority of the sightings, especially starting from 1896, 97, and up until modern time, could they be the same species, let's say? Because it appears that it's almost as if they're one step ahead of us, almost in some ways. Right.
Yeah. They're actually, and I've been watching that all along. Also, they're actually 40 to 50 years ahead of us, and then they're also gaining a little bit all the time because their energy source is obviously better. The whole point about them being from Earth, people get upset with me and say, well, some of them could be from other places. This is true. Some of them could be and probably are, because the original beings who inhabit these bases, even here on Earth, some of them probably do come from other places.
Yes.
But the thing is that with the amount of UFOs spotted in outer space, the amount of UFOs spotted in Earth's airspace, with the lack of UFOs spotted in outer space, come on. We know, as researchers, there's thousands of these things seen every year all across the world. And who could afford to send thousands of their machines from far, far away? To me, it makes sense that the bases are here somewhere on Earth.
And is that probably... Sorry, you've probably been asked this a million times, but that's probably why there was such an interest by the Nazis in the Antarctic. And,
exactly. I only answered half your question. You asked me about 1896. I believe the 1896 is a totally different ballgame. Right. I believe the 1896 is a group of secret societies who are developing these things, right. And I believe they definitely come from German roots. And so that leads you up to Hitler and all of that type of stuff.
Mm-hmm. That's very interesting. And, because there was numerous amounts of sightings of not the UFO-type vehicles as well. So
right after World War II.
But just recently with the Antarctic issue, again, Hillary Clinton almost set a travel embargo for the Antarctic region. I'm wondering if they're trying to find the entry point down at the South Pole there.
Right. Well, there's a lot of speculation on that, and I've also done heavy research into the Antarctic and Arctic and the amount of, especially Admiral Byrd. I spent 2 years researching nothing but Admiral Byrd, and but the whole German thing, the Germans actually believed that the Earth was hollow. Yes. They actually believed. Actually, their belief was that you've got to look at the secret societies that the Nazis were involved in, that Hitler and Goebbels and all of them were involved in. You had one secret society, the Thule Society. They believed that the Germans were a master race that had come from a country called a continent rather called Ultra-Thule that was far to the north. And in ancient times, and they sent scientists all over the world to prove that there was an Aryan race, which it actually, when people talk about Aryan race, there's no such thing as an Aryan race. But I don't want to argue that with people. But they believe that there was an Aryan race and that they came far to the north. The other secret society, and the name slips my mind, you've got to remember it's been 25 years since I studied this stuff. But the other secret society, well, actually, it wasn't a secret society. It involved in World War I when a German fighter pilot got shot down, and they took the prisoners of war to Canada. And this German pilot was a hero in Germany, but he was in prison in Canada, and all he had to read was a booklet that came from Cyrus Teed, which was called The Burning Cross. And Cyrus Teed was down in Florida. I've done stories on his settlement down there. But he believed that we lived inside the earth. And so he believed the earth was hollow, but he didn't believe we lived on the outside. He believed that we lived inside. So this when the World War I was over and this flyer went back home, naturally he received a hero's welcome. And the pamphlet and the idea got into the hands of the secret society, and so they even did some research during the war, where they went up to a place on the north and tried to shoot radar off of the crust, which would be above their head, and destroy the fleet in the English harbor. So they've been involved, with this all along. There's some evidence that points towards World War II. The fact that World War II might have something to do with these so-called entrances at the North and South Pole, because of the fact that if you look at the explorations of the 1800s and up into the 1920s, it was all France, the United States, England. Nordic countries were all exploring the poles, and the Germans weren't really involved until 1939.
Now, do you think that there's any connection, this might seem off base, but with Bermuda Triangles and those sort of interdimensional portals?
I have an article here, and I can't remember exactly where it is, but it's by Saunderson, the great man that brought us Bigfoot. and it's out of if I remember right, it's out of an Argosy Band magazine. And heck, I've got it shoved in one of the books, but I don't have time to look. But anyway, he claimed that if you started at the pyramids and you drew pyramids around the earth going from 33 degrees north to 33 degrees south, and make 13 points, that each one of those would land in an area that was strange. The Bermuda Triangle, the Sea of Japan, and the mountains of Tibet. And so his idea was all of these were portals, maybe time portals or whatever. And yes, I do believe that is possible.
Is that also why with the Freemasons they kind of have the 33, 333 kind of connection as well?
Never looked at that, but that's an interesting point. I never have really. You're the first one to mention that I've ever connected it. But that is a good point.
I also had almost a kind of, this is probably purely science fiction, but perhaps the reason why boats and aircraft go missing over these type of triangle spots is because the entities from Hollow Earth sort of kidnap or take them hostage and pirate for supplies reasons. Like they may. I've thought about that also. But I think a more plausible idea is I believe that if we do have bases inside the earth and under the oceans that are bases for interplanetary beings, that they have to have a supply ship. And I believe that these huge motherships come. I don't believe what I saw was a supply ship. I think they're much bigger than that. And I believe that if these are portals, that they could be entering through these portals, and if somebody was caught up in that when they were making this change from outer to inner, they might be sucked in with them. That's pretty much the way I see that. Yeah, just an innocent victim, in other words.
Yes, right. They just happen to be the old saying, at the wrong place at the wrong time.
Well, there's also a military faction, they decided to create these deep underground bases as well. I mean,
Yes.
Do you believe that they're working in connection with these creatures, and if so,
yes. Now we're into the. See, there's two theories. One's the Hollow Earth theory, and the other is the subterranean worlds theory. Now, I put more validity in the subterranean worlds theory than I do in the Hollow Earth theory. Okay,
right.
And that's exactly what you're talking about. Since the 1950s, there have been tunnel noises heard. They started in England and spread all over the world. Some were heard in Taos not long ago. We called the Tahoe Hub, those type of things. And if you go back and read the old history books, I mean, the best books you can read are around the 1800s. If you go back and read some of those old books from the 1800s, Ancient America, and some of those, you'll find that back in those days they knew of tunnels all over the world. The tunnel systems exist everywhere. I believe those humming noises are governments opening up some of those ancient tunnels.
That's right, and you look at even stories that were written back then, as you said, like for example, Lord of the Rings. They had Middle Earth. They always talked about
exactly.
Middle Earth.
Exactly.
It was accepted and it wasn't far fetched.
Right, Jules Verne, Journey to the Center of the Earth.
Yep.
Edgar Rice Burroughs, Tarzan. And, a lot of these guys were far-seeing. I mean, let's take Jules Verne. Everything he ever predicted came true except Journey to the Center of the Earth.
That's right.
It makes you wonder, Getting back to the Germans and my book connection to all this. So in the 1990s, I started putting out a little newsletter or magazine, if you will, called the Hollow Earth Insider. I started it to go to 8 people around the country who were really interested in inner Earth mysteries. There wasn't a lot of interest back in those days, but there was a handful of people. And through those and word of mouth and Robert Gerard at Octourus Books, who put it in his catalog, the Hollow Earth Insider ended up in every state in the nation and 35 countries. And they were all sending me information, so I was able to gather all the information. Well, during that time, I was, like I said, I was studying animal bird and that type of Antarctica. I have a friend who lives in Texas, one of my best friends, and he's a master carpenter, and he has the contract to repair anything that gets broken or needs replaced in Antarctica. So he was going on one of those trips, and he stopped through Jacksonville to visit with me on his way down to Antarctica. And I happened to be working on this series of magazines about animal bird in Antarctica. So I said, hey, will you take these down there and put them in their library? I know they got a library. He said, sure. So he took them down. So they ended up in the Antarctica library. Well, to make a long story short, he came back and gave his father one. And then I went over to Texas to visit him. And we had our, visit. Of course, I've got family over there and had all kinds of other things to do. But he kept asking me to go visit his father. And so finally I went and visited his father, and we spent a day together. His father was an unbelievable UFO investigator from the 1950s with just, evidence and kept meticulous notes and everything. And I came home happy to have met him. And he calls me and he asked me, had I talked to him about Delshaw? And I said, no, never heard of it. He told me, man, you need to get back to Texas. And he told me this little story, and I rushed back. And what happened, like I said, I was interested in the 1896-97 airship mystery. Well, so was Pete. And he was working on a series of articles with another ufologist of the time called Louis Ferris, who put out the UFO clipping service for years. But anyway, he had been working on the same thing. And he had noticed in his paper one day that there was going to be an exhibit of some artwork having to do with aircraft at a university. And he went over and he got to looking at it. And what he found was beautiful artistic creations of unbelievable-looking flying machines. And they were all dated from 1901 to 1923, and they're in that area. and they were done by an artist who signed every page called Charles A. Delshaw. And Pete, because of his background of being a commercial artist and interested in things that fly, and also interested in codes, he got to notice that there was weird things on these drawings, and he noticed that the first thing he noticed was that there were little pieces of engine hidden in these colorful drawings that looked like they might work. Most people, when they look at Delshaw's, and then if anybody wants to go look at some of these drawings, it's spelled Dellschau. Just Google it up, or Charles Delshaw. 35 of them, if you live in England, 35 of them are on display right now at the Museum of Anything in London, England. They sell, if you want to buy one, they sell on the market right now from $10,000 to $25,000 a piece.
Wow.
Well, at that time, he went, and like I say, he became so enthused with these things that he traced them down. And the story he found out was that a junk man had found them in a dump in Houston, Texas, and he'd brought them back to a shop, and they had sit there a year, and then they had discovered them and put them on display at the college. So he became friends with this junk man because he became so intrigued with these things that he would go into this man's shop and look at these books day after day. Pete had the time because he owned a graphics company, and everybody worked for him. He was the boss, so he could do what he wanted to do. And finally, he ended up buying them. And what he discovered was that there was a code hidden in these drawings. And he finally found the key to the code. And the story that Delshaw tells us is that in 1849, that he was in California during the gold rush in Sonora, California, and that he joined a secret society called the Sonora Aero Club, who was a branch of another secret society called NIMSA. And that they had, that one of the gentlemen had discovered an anti-gravity fuel, and they had formed the secret society to invent and fly airships in secret because they didn't want anybody to steal their ideas. And it all sounds far out, but as Pete began to research this, he began to find a lot of things that doubted it. So anyway, when I heard that story, I dropped Hollow Earth, I dropped UFO, and I started researching for myself. And oh man, I mean, it just blew me away. So we ended up. So the day finally came when Pete came to me. He gave me about 5,000 pages, and he said, with drawings and photographs and that type of thing. And he said, make this a readable book, enjoyable, that people will see how I broke the code and all. So that's what I did. We got 200 of his drawings and pictures in it, and it's really great.
And where do you think they were inspired by this technology? Do you think it's, because I'm looking at a picture of it right now, is it an extension of Da Vinci's designs, or is this entirely something different?
No, I believe this is entirely something different. But what I do believe is that this stuff was brought forward because, like I said, 40 years later, these flying machines were seen all over the United States, and they actually started, the first one was spotted in Sacramento, which is about 125 miles west of Sonora, I believe, or somewhere in that area. So I do believe it's possible that this was because here's one thing that's really interesting. In the Delshaw's drawings, and by the way, he named 65 people and has a history of them and all. And this story wasn't written straight out like a book. It was put scattered all throughout the book. It took me 14 years to get the book published, but it took Pete 27 years to put the story together. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is, starting with Crenshaw, it was human beings on the craft. 1896, it was human beings on the craft. if you look at the best cases today, if you get down into it, they'll admit they're human beings. I had Don Schmidt on the show. He knows everything about Roswell. And, everybody always, when they see a picture of Roswell, they think of one of these little alien happy faces from the 30s, from the 1980s. The ones everybody sees the green face was like the one on my picture on my site. And everybody thinks that's what these are. But Don Schmidt even said, no, what they actually say is they first say they're little people, like little kids. But they have a disformed body and a disformed face. And yet, and you talk to Travis Walton. If you read his book, you'll see there was a human in command on the ship, yet once it made to the movie, that was totally ignored.
That's right.
And Betty and Barney Hill, German-looking humans. So, like I said, we're all heading in the wrong direction with what we look at with this origin of UFO stuff, and it's been planned that way. I have a lot of respect for the ground pounded UFO investigators out there in the groups that we all know. But when you get up into the hierarchy, you sure found a lot of retired military up there. And where do they get their paycheck from?
So true. And you make some really good points, too, because if they are, entities from subterranean places on the planet, there would be more gravity, hence they would be smaller, and less light. Their eyes would be bigger. So, that almost is a description of a gray, the typical gray. So it really does connect a lot of dots.
Well, if you take the inner worlds as an answer, like I say, I started my investigating and research with the one thought that everything has a simple answer. It's not all hard rocket science. There are simple answers to this stuff. And if you take and accept the fact that we could have a world inside of our world, however it's formed, or under our oceans or whatever, you can look at Bigfoot. Bigfoot. I read an article in years ago in Argosy, and I've still got the book. Excuse me, by a very well-known psychic, and they had taken another well-known psychic, and they had taken a picture of a footprint of one of the big feet that they had found out in California, and put it in an envelope and sealed it up and given it to her, and asked her what did she see, and she said that she saw a man that was covered with hair, but had facial features not like a man, but he walked on 2 feet, and that they were all hiding in the lava tunnels and the tunnels in California. And then you think of them being seen at night, their eyes are red, and they disappear in the daytime and their bones are gone and all. There's some people who researched the inner earth who believe they are possibly the guardians to the entrances.
Well, I have another question, too, in regards to a possible thing that might connect even more to this, and I'm sure you've covered it probably a million times as well, but there's specific areas of the Earth that have weird openings or holes. One pretty famous one is Mel's Hole. There's another one in Russia that apparently has the sounds of hell being emitted.
Okay, the sounds of hell, to me, I believe that's a total fraud. Mel's Hole, I really, it's always interesting to me, intrigued me. But yes, there are definitely entrances. There's definitely an entrance in Kentucky. There's entrances in South America. In fact, on our show, in Ravening the Secrets, we have a regular guest who comes once a month, Dean DeLucia, who lives in Brazil, and he is investigating right now. He's in contact with the #1 UFO group in Brazil, and we're working on that right now. But he's going to also go into the tunnels, some of the tunnels in the future. So there are entrances around the world that are very possible Indian. The Tibetan mountains, excuse me. There's an old book. There's several books, in fact. After the Russia war of 18, I think it's 18. I'm not going to give a year. It's 1920, but I'm not going to give a year. Anyway, after that war, several people had to escape the Russians, and they ran into Tibet. And a couple of them were scholars, and they wrote books. Two of them wrote books about going to cities in Tibet, underground cities in Tibet. And of course, the Dalai Lama has already admitted there's one. So, there's a lot of evidence towards that. It's hard for people to imagine. I always ask people, well, why do you believe the government? Really, what's the bottom line? If you believe the government's hiding all this information, why are they doing it? And almost 99% of them will tell me, well, if they tell everybody, there'll be a panic like there was, back with Orson Welles in the 40s, and everybody will, all freak. That's bull, because they've been indoctrinated towards people coming from outer space since the 50s with their movies and all their indoctrination. But what if at the same time, what if the president got on the mic tomorrow and said, hey, we have a civilization that's way more intelligent than us that actually lives right here on Earth with us. Now that would freak some people.
That's a very good point. And, I just wanted to kind of put out the possibility that some of these openings and holes might actually be almost a ventilation system, like a natural ventilation system from the Earth itself to keep the air quality, at a peak level down there, if there is a possible connection to that. And
right.
If the sounds of hell are actually real, let's say, for example, when you're in a mall during the Christmas holidays and all you hear is just this background echo
roar,
noise.
Yeah,
that's probably what that is, just in a humongous scale.
Right. Well, there are, if you want to look at a little science real quick, I can give you some science that points towards the possibility of the hollow Earth theory being as possible as the accepted theory. First, you got to separate the two. First, remember I told you that there's the hollow Earth theory and the subterranean theory. We're talking about the hollow Earth theory now, which I give less validity to. But still, let me show you some stuff. The two differences are that in the accepted theory in the 1950s, when I was a kid and I read my science book, it said that the Earth was composed of different layers of materials, and as you went deeper into the Earth, it became more firm and more pressure. And so in my mind, it was like a jawbreaker. Now, in 1913, the hollow Earth theory was put forth by Marshall B. Gardner, and what he says is that planets are formed by nuclei, and when the nuclei spins, make it simple, the real heavy stuff is pulled inwards, and it's pulled tighter and tighter inwards because it's so heavy, and all that pressure pulling inwards causes friction, which causes heat, which causes light, and so that makes it a ball of light in the center, and all the lighter stuff was slung outwards to where centrifugal force, which is something that science refuses to accept, and gravity beat was formed at outer of that center thing, a inner sun. So that's how the hollow Earth theory goes. Now, he also said that because of the spinning mass spinning at the equator of the spinning outer mass would bulge because it's pushed outward more, where at the top there would be less matter and there would be a hole at the north and south poles. And so that's where the holes fit into the equation. In 1995, two scientists found out, and this was in Earth magazine, and I got a picture on my wall, but I think it's from 1995. But two scientists found that now you got to remember that the hollow Earth theory is that if you go over into the inside, there'll be another land just like the outside land on the inside. You'd be upside down, naturally. But it's the mass that attracts, not the center sun, but the mass of the Earth. So if you went inside the mass of the Earth, you'd still be sticking, your feet would still be on the ground. And he says inside there are mountains and valleys and everything, just like on the outside. Well, this new finding in the 95 was so mind-blowing that the scientists even wrote a book called Naked Earth, just to try to cover up some of this stuff. But it said that the findings was that the underside of the mantle, and this is almost an exact quote, a good paraphrase anyway, that the underside of the mantle looked just like the outer surface. There were valleys and mountains and all of that type of thing. So that part did not fit what I learned in the country in 1995 or 55, nor did it fit the as they came up with. In other words, that underside fits the hollow earth theory. So they had to change the accepted theory, but you don't have to change the hollow earth theory. Now, a year after that, and all of this can be found on my website, www.thehollowearthinsider.com. Up in the right-hand corner, it says Best of THEI, and you can find all the articles there with all the documentation, because when you say this kind of stuff, you really need good documentation, and mine is good. So anyway, some Chinese scientists found that the inner sun spun faster than the Earth. People probably remember this one, and so the planets were saying, "Wow, that's an unbelievable." That's an unbelievable belief. That's an unbelievable finding. They said that means we've got a planet within a planet. Well, I went to the dictionary. I looked up the definition of planet. I looked up the definition of sun, and I find that our center core, with it spinning separately, fits the definition of an inner sun. Once again, it fits the hollow earth theory, but not the accepted theory.
Unbelievable.
And then, now, of course, there's three questions everybody's going to ask you when you the hollow earth. First one's going to be, what about volcanoes? Doesn't that prove that because the only difference between the hollow earth theory and the accepted theory, right at this moment, is that the hollow earth theory says that between the sun, the core, and the mantle is molten lava. That's what the accepted theory says. The hollow earth theory says, no, there's an atmosphere there. They have nowhere to prove it either one. No way at all. They could speculate and all of this, but, and I know about the beams they shoot down and all that, but that could be explained too. But get back to the volcanoes. Actually, if you go look up volcanoes, it'll tell you that volcanoes come from inside the crust. No lava has ever come up from deeper than 35 miles. The crust and mantle is 2,500 miles thick. The deepest we've ever gone is in Russia. We've gone 8.5 miles. That's the deepest man has gone. So for anybody to tell you what's at 2,500 feet, where are they getting the information? They're getting the information because they found that there was because using the waves, they found that there was no solid mass there, and they said, well, it's hot. The deeper you go, the hotter it gets, so it's got to be lava. It's got to be an outer core of lava. Wrong. Now I might be getting these two mixed up. Like I said, it's a long time. One of them is the deepest hole drug in Russia. The other one is a hole drilled at the bottom of the sea where they could get into the actual mantle away from the crust, and that's called the Moho Project. Now, like I say, you go to my site and you get the right ones. But one of them showed that the deeper you went, the hotter it got until you reach 14,000 feet. At 14,000 feet, the increase of the heat started decreasing. In other words, less. So that the possibility exists that as you went deeper, it would decrease to the point where it would be the same as the outer crust. Now, the other question that they always ask you is, what about pressure the deeper you go? Well, in either one of those two, the opposite one from the other one, they found that to a point that was right. The deeper you went, the more pressure built up, until all of a sudden they reached a spot where the pressure dropped. And they've never been able to explain that. So all three of those can be wiped out instantly. Go to my website. You can get the information out of the accepted scientific books, the New York Times, and all the places that I get this information. Now, as far as the poles go, the North Pole, in 1947, a combined, 1947 is a very good year, okay? Yeah. 1947, there were several things going on. 1947, we know about the UFO sightings. 1947, Admiral Byrd was taking the largest movement of military troops in the history of the world to Antarctica. They were supposed to go down for 8 months. They stayed 8 weeks. There were lives lost. There was different things lost, and they've never been explained. He returned. There was a small, in the New York Times, there was a small article that I have that said that he had returned to Washington and would be conducting operations at both poles from Washington. That got me interested. If what's going on at the other pole, okay? So I found that there was a combined English and Canadian-American Air Force operation where they were going up north to find the exact spot of the North Magnetic Pole. What they found was they found 3 magnetic poles, and like I said, this was reported in 1947 in the New York Times, and the information of where can be found on my website, the best of THEI. Okay? They found 3, and the newspaper said, which means there's a possibility that there is a circle North Magnetic Pole, not one spot, but it might be in a circle, which once again fits the Hollow Earth theory. Okay? Now, whenever you've got a hunter, some hunters have a dog, and there's a rabbit hole, and they know which both ends of the rabbit hole is. One of the things they'll do is send the dog to one rabbit hole and wait at the other rabbit hole to come out. Well, during this 1947 time, when we saw all the UFOs, when Admiral Byrd was going, taking an army down to the South Pole, which has never been explained, when they were searching for an actual magnetic field, I talked to Wendell Stevens, who's a longtime UFO investigator. And what I asked him, he has one of the largest collections of UFO photographs in the world. And I asked him, what got you interested in UFO photography? And he said that when he was in the war, 1947, that he was stationed in Alaska. And they had taken a whole squadron of the old bombers from World War II, outfitted them with the best cameras money could buy for the time, and sent them up under secret orders to watch Russia. He said, but they had another secret order. He said, if these guys would fly back into Alaska, and they would actually, armed guards would take the film canisters off the planes, nobody would look at them, and they would turn them over to suits who would fly them back to one of the Air Force bases in the States. He said, so I never got to see one. He said, but I asked the guys, what were they actually shooting? What were they taking pictures of? And they said they were taking pictures of UFOs shooting in and out of the ice, coming out of the ice and going back into the ice. So you got Admiral Byrd at the South Pole, and you got UFOs coming out of the ice at the North Pole, and you got us trying to find out where the hole is.
Well, in regards to Admiral Byrd, have you ever seen any of the films that he supposedly had of the landscape down there?
I don't believe in the existence of that. I believe that was a Ray Palmer thing.
Right.
It's like the saying, the saying, and I used it on the first year of my newsletter, There's a famous saying he's supposed to have said, I'd like to see that land beyond the pole, that mystery land. Well, actually, I found out that where he got that saying was actually out of an article that he wrote for National Geographic, and he said something like that magic land beyond the pole, you know. He didn't really say it the way Hollow Earthers like him to have said it.
And here's sort of a spiritual question for you, for everyone out there that may feel this way. Could this area of the world, in fact, be the Garden of Eden or Atlantis?
Yes, that's some of the people who have studied the Bible in conjunction with the Hollow Earth. I know of several. In fact, one of them strongly believes that Noah was actually washed out of the northern hole. They believe that heaven was inside earth and man was put on the outside as punishment. I kind of believe that what we are is an experiment. I believe that all heavenly bodies are hollow to an extent, and that most civilizations in outer space live inside the planets, and that they found this beautiful green planet, and they put us here as an experiment to see how we can live on the outside. And they're monitoring.
Here's a really kind of far out there question too. Could this possibly be ongoing as we speak on Mars? Yes.
Mars. And by the way, there is also several scientists who quietly have admitted that the moon is probably hollow. Right. A lot of them believe that it is a made place instead of a natural.
Yeah, I've actually read articles myself, you're right, where they claim there's little machines coming in and out of the moon.
Right, you know. Right. And Mars, you know, you could have, you know, if civilizations lived inside, I mean, you know, I always like with the religious people when they start getting me, I always say, well, answer me this. If God built a house, why did he put everybody on the roof? Why did he let them go inside?
That's right.
You know, so, and the other point now we got to not forget is undersea. You know, supposedly mankind came from under the sea. Well, during all the time that we were getting rid of a tail and learning how to walk and learning how to pick bananas, during all of that time, if there was some other entity that stayed under the sea, their mind would keep growing while we were learning to walk.
You never know, as you said, being an experiment, it could have offshoots, like, as you mentioned before, Bigfoot can be an extension of that. And, you know, a lot of people hold a very high value in whales and dolphins for their intelligence. Possibly that was a water version of a humanoid.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. And you know, we've never explored the oceans. You know, I mean, even in my research, I haven't touched the oceans yet. You know, it was easier to do the land than the ocean, you know.
That's true.
Because I was in the Merchant Marine when I was real young, and I'm going to tell you what, you get out there on one of them ships, the ocean is huge, and those ships follow the same lanes. So there's millions of miles of ocean that's never seen by man.
That's right. And then you add the fact that it's, you know, I'm not even sure the deepest part of the ocean, how deep it really is, because as you said earlier, you know, they claim that the crust is a certain number when it's something totally different. So really, what's down there? You know, that's the
exactly. We don't know. We don't know. That's my biggest argument. Like I said, you know, the Hollow Earth I'm still having problems with it, but I do find stuff that support it. Now we'll have another show someday if you want to. The subterranean world is even more interesting. But yeah, I think it's more apt that that's what they're covering up than that beings are coming from outer space. I mean, if you know, being a UFO investigator, think about it. You never see pictures of UFOs from outer space. even if you see them from the shuttle, they're below the shuttle. Always below it, never above it.
And I'm almost wondering, too, if that's why there's selected oil drill sites on the planet. Maybe an agreement was made, certain no zones, you know what I mean, that kind of thing. Very good point, because they do fight not to, to drill certain places where you go somewhere else and it's actually just as close to land or whatever, Yep, that's right. Whatever their excuse is. That's right. But it is, what's really interested me, I know we only got a minute, what's really interested me over the years is that when I first started doing this, I was a total nut to even think that anything came from inside of Earth, and more people are starting to look at it. And, hey, whether I'm right or wrong, check it out. That's it. Think beyond the box, and why not try and investigate it? And that's right. I do have a person on the line here from area code 301. Would you mind taking a call before we get off the line? Of course not. Okay, here we are. Hello. Hello, area code. Please go ahead. 301, that's, you're live on the air with Paranormal Guys Inc. Radio. Well, I guess. Hello. Yeah, maybe they're just listening. All right. That's okay then. So, do you have any major plans for another book, or are you just basically, investigating? I am working on another book. By the way, this book is called The Secrets of Del Shah, and the site is www.secretsofdelshah.com. That's spelled DELLSCHAAU. You guys go look at my site and buy my book. so that I will put out this other one. Yeah, I'm writing a book on Raymond Bernard, who was the also known as Walter Seigmeister, who was the author of The Hollow Earth. But way beyond that, he was the most unbelievable man that I've ever had the privilege to run across. And I happen to have been in touch with some people that knew him and got some first-hand information. So yeah, I'm working on a book about Raymond Bernard. It will be called Raymond Bernard, a.k.a. Walter Seigmeister, the one-man search for paradise. And also you can read part of that on my site, too. And if the timing was right and the conditions were right, I think it's about time that a program got together, a well-made program on the stuff you're researching. Have you reached out to try and get that put together? Yes, we are going to work on that. Probably be another year or so. But yes, I'm lining up people. We're going to do a whole series of shows or a convention type thing on those subjects. And do you have any upcoming events that you take part of, or like speaking engagements, that kind of thing? Nope, just come to our show, Unravel the Secrets here on Blog Talk or over on People's TV Network. And, we have a lot of good guests. Constantly we've got guests on almost every week. And then the last last Saturday, of the week, of the month, we have a series of people who are regulars from Australia, South America, Brazil, and we've got Mexico coming online and different other places. So yeah, we're just trying to spread the word, man. And let me ask you one final question, because it's always interesting to find out how the people around you engage this. The family reaction, are they supportive, or do they kind of take a step back? Actually, my family is they're supportive, but they're not involved. Right. They know. I've been doing this all my life. My two sons, they'll shoot me information that they find and whatnot. But to them, I'm just dead. And my other family, my mother and brothers and sisters and all, I'm just the nut in the family. But we have fun talking. Yeah. Most of them don't even believe in UFOs. No.
which to me is ridiculous in this day and time.
Oh, I know. Trying to convince them, it's like pulling teeth. It's just.
Yeah, I don't try to convince, and that's one of the reasons. Like I said, people should go to my site and see where I don't make this stuff up at all, and I don't use just the UFO as my source, UFO books and whatnot. I actually go and look at science and other things.
Well, I want to tell you firsthand, it's been an absolute joy to speak with you tonight, Dennis, and I really appreciate you coming on the show, and it's been an honor. And I would certainly love to have a second show anytime you want to go fully in depth with the subterranean aspect of this research of yours, and take it to the next level.
I'll certainly do that with you. Both of us have busy schedules, but we'll figure it out.
That's for sure. Well, in the meantime, I will definitely be listening to your shows on Saturday as well. And you have yourself a great night, and take care.
You too, and thank you, Jason.
Have a great night.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody, for listening, and join me for my next show as Richard Dolan, a ufologist, will be my guest. And that's going to be on March 11th at 10 p.m. It's another hour show or longer, depending on how it goes. But in the meantime, everyone take care. Have a great night. We'll talk soon.
Thank you.